Hi, welcome back to Book Chats from Lonsdale Public Library. It is October, so you know what that means. Scary stuff. Halloween is coming up. So, quick plug, we will be having a Halloween party on Friday, October 29th from 4 to 6 p.m. If you have kids, bring them in. It gives them another chance to wear their costumes. We'll have games, crafts, treats, a mad science lab. Fun for all ages. So, that said, oh, also, while I'm doing plugs, we are doing a book giveaway on Facebook again this month. You can win Untamed by Glennon Doyle if you tell us what book scared your socks off. So, if you need some ideas about scaring your socks off, I got them. So, like I say, scary books. The truth is, these days, I don't read that many scary things. I think it may be an age issue. When I was young and indestructible, I couldn't get enough of Stephen King and all of his many imitators. These days, I think it's the existential dread of getting older is all I need to scare me. But there is, in fact, a lot of good stuff out there. It seems like horror is having a real renaissance right now. So I'm going to recommend some old, some new. I'm going to start with The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is a classic. It is sort of the quintessential ghost story. It's a total Gothic horror, creeping dread, slowly building kind of story. And as you might expect from the author of The Lottery, and if you have not read The Lottery, rush right out and read The Lottery. It's one of the best short stories in American literature. But, it's all normal, and then, wait, that's not normal, and it just sort of creeps into your brain. So the story is, Hill House is an isolated mansion with a bad reputation. Classic Gothic. So Dr. John Montague is an investigator of the supernatural. So he rents Hill House hoping to find proof of spooky things. And he invites a bunch of people who have had mysterious happenings in their past. And only two of them arrive. One is Eleanor, who's a shy woman who's had really kind of a dull and unpleasant life taking care of a cranky and ill mother. So this is sort of a big adventure for her. And then Theodora, who's a bohemian artist. She's implied to be a lesbian, very, outside of the norm, very different than staid Eleanor. And then Luke Sanderson, who is the no-good young heir to Hill House, is sort of shipped off to keep an eye on them. There are two caretakers, Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, who are very dour and absolutely will not be in the house after dark, which should be a hint. But so these four people are isolated, and they come together and begin to build a friendship, and the doctor tells them about the history of the house, which is full of suicides and mysterious deaths and bad and creepy things. And before you know it, they start to experience weird, classic, scary stuff like pounding on the walls and rattling of doors and mysterious messages written on the walls. But what's interesting is it seems like Eleanor might be experiencing more phenomena than others. So you're left with this question: is it in her mind? Is she faking it? Does she have some kind of power? Is it really a haunting? What's real and what's not? Which is exciting. So classic, don't miss it. Can't talk about horror without talking about Stephen King. I could do many of them, but I decided on Salem's Lot as sort of the quintessential vampire story. The kind that do not sparkle and are not romantic. Just scary and creepy. And it does what Stephen King does so well. He starts with these very specific, he's got a wonderful eye for the details that make you really sort of understand, like, this town sounds very much like my town, and these people are like people I know. So then when something horrific comes into that place, it makes it even scarier because it's plausible. So this is a story, as so many Stephen Kings are, about a writer who returns, Ben Mears is his name, returns to his childhood home in Jerusalem's Lot, Maine, to write his next book. It's supposed to be about this spooky old Marston house. He makes friends with a school teacher named Matt and strikes up a relationship with a attractive young lady named Susan. And he learns that the house has been bought by this Kurt Barlow, who nobody's met. He's supposedly an antique dealer. Oh, he's on a buying trip, and you only see his partner, Richard Straker. Well, it turns out that Barlow is an ancient vampire. He's in town. He just doesn't come out when people can see him. And Straker is his human familiar. So Barlow, he turns a 12-year-old named Danny, and the two of them start to turn other people in town. Lots of very creepy moments. And a young boy named Mark, Danny, his friend Danny, comes to change him into a vampire, but he holds him off with a crucifix. So these people join together. Ben, Susan, young Mark, Matt, a local doctor named Jimmy, and the priest, Father Callahan, form a team to fight this evil in their town. But, as you know, it being Stephen King, faith will be tested, terrifying things will happen, and the chances are not all of them are going to make it. So it is a scary book. It is a thrilling book. Give it a shot. Then I want to go with one that's a little bit outside of the norm of your classic horror, World War Z, An Oral History of the Zombie War by Max Brooks. Such a good book. Don't watch the movie. The movie's terrible. It has nothing to do with the book. But it's about the zombie apocalypse. Zombie apocalypse is very big these days. And a lot of the movies are terrible, but some of them are good. But this is really interesting, and it takes a different tack. The idea is, the premise, that it's 10 years after the end of the zombie war, and the author is collecting stories. So he talks to people around the globe about their experiences during this huge zombie apocalypse. And it starts with a doctor in China who sees a patient with a very mysterious, dangerous condition. And it ends with a veteran of the war, reflecting on how things have changed. So it covers the entire, from there starts being an inkling of something weird until humans declare victory. And it covers every part of the globe, every kind of person, and lots of different stories. So some of them are terrifying, and some of them are just sad, and some are heroic. But what's really great about this, and it's when I used to watch The Walking Dead, I'm kind of over it now, but I felt like I had to justify it to people because it's very violent. And what it does at its best, and what this does at its best, is it makes you think about what happens to humans when we're put into extreme circumstances. So it's not even so much about the horrible zombies, it's about how do humans react. And, some of them are heroes and some of them are villains, and because we're human. But I highly recommend it. It's a very interesting book. And one more vampire. This is a very recent book. I believe it was last year. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Which, first of all, what a great title. I'm already hooked. And it takes place in Charleston, South Carolina in the 1990s. And it's about Patricia Campbell, who's a bored housewife, her term. Her days are filled, taking care of her senile mother-in-law, her mostly absent these days husband, and her teenage children who kind of don't need her as much anymore. And so she's bored, and the most exciting thing in her life is her book club, where they read true crime. And she hopes that something exciting will happen. Well, of course, be careful what you wish for, because a new fellow moves into town, and suddenly strange things start to happen. Like Patricia goes into her backyard and gets attacked and bitten by the little lady from across the road. Weird. That's weird. So this newcomer, James James Harris, he's charming, he's handsome. Everybody likes him, including Patricia at first. But then black children start disappearing in a neighboring town, and she starts to put things together and suspect him. And she meets up with Ursula Green, a black woman who had previously worked for her family, and she confirms that his van has been seen in the neighborhood, and children are disappearing, and they're either dying or they're either disappearing and not being seen again, or they're killing themselves in horrible ways, which is really disturbing. But the almost more disturbing than the horrible things that happen are the fact that nobody believes her. The police don't take her seriously, and her husband treats her like a hysterical woman. And basically, one after another, all the people that Patricia relies on sort of offer her the choice between following her beliefs or shutting up and, doing what's expected of her as a proper woman. So I was surprised, it's an exciting story. It's full of horror and bravery, but what really shocked me was the extent to which what she really had to fight was all these shackles of race and class and gender and how a woman is supposed to behave before she could even get to the part about trying to fight the horrifying vampire who's sucking her community dry. So really, really good book. I highly recommend it. And then I'm just going to briefly mention a couple that I have not yet read, but which have gotten great reviews. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. It's a Gothic horror novel set in Mexico in the 1950s. Noemi Taboada, hopefully I said that right, leaves her life as a socialite in Mexico City when her cousin contacts her. The cousin is recently married and moved to, oh yes, a dark and remote mansion. And she's finding weird things in the family that she's married into does not seem to be what they appeared. So, Mexican Gothic sounds really good. And then Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. It's about a single mother, Kate Reese, who flees an abusive relationship with her son Christopher, and they move to the tight-knit community of Mill Grove, Pennsylvania. Seems like a perfect, quiet little off-the-beaten-track kind of place to live, until Christopher vanishes into the woods for 6 days, and then when he reappears, he doesn't seem to be the same. So another really intriguing premise. So lots of scary stories for Halloween. Hopefully we will see you soon. Bye-bye.